We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around, and helping good parents carry on. Standing united, we'll overcome. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.
Welcome to this, another in the series of panel discussions, sponsored and presented by Family Fest. Family Fest is a charity organization with a vision of helping to nurture better and stronger families. As such, we see the Family Fest month as merely a promotion period aimed at drawing attention to and heightening awareness of the organization and its cause. We therefore intend to be active all year round with a variety of strategic initiatives to help families where they're at. It is our intention to be extremely active in the community as we go into schools, businesses, and social venues, just to name a few, to offer help and to get our message out. That being said, at this time, in this present panel discussion, we hope to seriously address the topic, how to love your family as a woman. Now, I'm not a woman, but I have been fortunate and blessed to have three beautiful women to accompany me this evening to tackle this topic. And I want you to understand, before I say anything about them, where we are going. It is believed that women are considered nurturers and expected to know instinctively how to express their feelings in positive ways. It seems almost a no-brainer that they should know how to love their families, but nothing could be farther from the truth for many. For we relate to people, first, if I may say, as a man, but they more instinctively as women are usually in a situation, oftentimes a reflection of their personal experiences, environmental upbringing, mixed with ever-changing worldviews instead of from biblical guidance of God's expectation. What if many simply don't know how to love because they've never experienced it? Well, you can raise it however you want. But the objective of this panel discussion at this time is to provide a sound foundation for women from all strata of society and ages in life to know how to love their families. That being said, I want to present my panelists at this time, distinguished ladies as they are: Francilia Graves, Nicole Clark, and Dr. Joan Pinckney. Now, I shall intend to assist in a very small way by just giving my name and then present the ladies. I'm Reverend Stephen Gittins, and I am now going to allow the ladies exactly 1 minute to say something about themselves. Francilia, do you mind if you start to share briefly about yourself? You have 1 minute.
Well, as you said, my name is Francilia Graves. I have been a teacher. Of course, I'm retired now, but I was a teacher for almost 30 years at the Parkinson School, Foundation School, and Harrison College as an English teacher, and finally retired as a guidance counselor at Harrison College.
Your minute is not up yet, you know.
And I was married for 48 years, so at least I have a lot of experience as a mother. I have two daughters and now three granddaughters. And I'm currently residing here in Florida with one of my daughters.
You're a blessed lady, madam, and I really appreciate what you shared about yourself, especially those 48 years. May God bless you.
Thank
Nicole,
you.
your chance to tell us a bit about yourself. You have a minute.
Okay, I'm a mother of 5 teenagers. We have 4 boys and 1 girl, and we've been married for about 20 years this year. I am a strong believer in family life and upholding the principles of Christ. And I'm currently pursuing my degree in psychology and sociology because one of the areas that I'm really interested in working with family life is with the whole element of mental health, because I believe that is the area that is sometimes overlooked, and we can sometimes chalk down, things to more always the spiritual side of things. But I would love to be one to bring the balance between the two.
I am sure you are going to give that balance this evening to every one of the listeners and those joining us. And then we have our Caribbean sister, Dr. Joan Pinkney. Can you hear me, ma'am?
I
And go
can.
full steam ahead with that 1 minute.
Okay. So happy to be with you this evening, all the way from Jamaica. I'm a counseling psychologist. I also am a lecturer in psychology primarily at several tertiary institutions part-time. In my daytime, I work at a copyright agency, the sister agency of B Copy in Barbados. And I work as the person who manages the licensing and the whole distribution of royalties. I do have a content practice, but I also have a radio program where I facilitate persons calling in about issues on air. I am a mother of 3 and been married for over 40 years. So yeah, that's it.
Well, let me tell you, I am extremely proud to be moderating at this time for ladies who have such in-depth experience in life, and also as they would serve in different capacities, which tells me that you're not to be taken lightly, or that your comments should be just thrown away at any whim. But I think that you are going to do justice to this presentation this evening. Doctor, since you were the last person to present about yourself, I'd like to give you about 5 or so minutes to tell me, what does this topic mean to you when you hear it? How to love your family as a woman. How do you relate to that? What is that saying to you?
Well, first of all, it can be viewed in various ways, not just as a woman, but also as a mother. So I thought about it not just in terms of a woman, but also as a mother. Um, Mothers are expected traditionally to have unconditional regard, unconditional love for their children. And so there's an instinct that research has time and again confirmed that exists with the mother and their child. And some research says that once you become pregnant, the instinct to love and to care and to protect your child emerges. And then they talk about the whole business of the shifts in the estrogen and the release of oxytocin, and how that love hormone generates and encourages the bond and the attachment and the attraction toward your child, that you even sometimes become fiercely defensive. So there's that, and there's also the situation where other research shows that some women, some mothers don't have that innate instinct, and so they struggle with how to love, how to care for their children, and by extension, their family. Some non-biological mothers, some mothers who have not given physical birth to a child, somehow have that instinct emerging from them. And some persons even experience those kinds, that instinct from teenage years or even before. And even though they may become adults, old adults, and have never given birth to a child, they still have that love and that care, that instinct to love their children as and by extension their family. And so I believe that a woman, a mother, can seek to protect and to care and to equally love their child, can, in the effort of showing love and care, should give equal attention to each and be abreast of the developmental stages that each child or each member of the family is going through. Should understand the love language that each speak and be able to speak to that language as well. And so effective communication will have a part to play. Encourage relationship. And a big part of it is modeling, being able to model what you want your family to do and how you want your family to operate. And of course, the underlying and the absolute thing is to commit your family to the Lord and teach your children and also demonstrate godly principles within the interaction with your family.
Very solid indeed. I'm taking note in what you're saying, and I like these words coming out: unconditional love, instinct, modeling. But that last one, committing your children, your family to the Lord, I think that's very, very solidly put. Francilia, how do you relate to this topic? How to love your family as a woman? I want to give you 5 minutes or so as well to present your feelings on this.
Well, first of all, I've always felt that having children, they're not my children, that they're, I hear people say, oh, my children, with this kind of very possessive attitude, as if, they made them and they're theirs. I've always felt as a Christian that these children have been entrusted to me by God. And as such, I am just a caretaker, and therefore I have to do my best because I'm accountable for what they become and the kind of human beings I put out there into the world. So that in child rearing, that was the bedrock on which I based my children's upbringing. So there was demonstrated affection, time to play games with them, have fun things, playing Scrabble and, taking them to the beach and so on. But I was never their best friend until they're grown, to maybe 16, 17, and as Beijing say, past the worst. I hear parents saying, oh, our children, my mother is my best friend. Well, we were never best friends till they had, become teenagers. I am your mother, and I lay down the rules. I set standards and guidelines. I teach responsibility. I control, or make suggestions as to the standards you keep for choosing your friends. Practical things like that, until we develop a bond of trust and respect, and then we can move on to that higher level of maybe becoming friends as such.
Those are very powerful concepts, terms used. You said they're not mine, they're entrusted to you by
And it's
God.
all.
You said you're accountable for what they become. You demonstrate affection. This is solid, and I like this piece. You're not their best friend until. So in other words, you're suggesting to me that some period of time must pass, some examinations must be successfully completed, and you're telling me you're setting standards and guidelines.
Yes.
Even this last one, control, I think a lot of people misinterpret and misunderstand that aspect that is necessary, but I read you well. I will get back to you on the Scrabble, however, so you just hold on a little bit. Nicole, it's your turn. How do you relate to this topic? How to love your family as a woman? You have your 5 minutes or so now, too.
I totally agree with Miss Graves regarding as far as parenting is concerned. In fact, I think I see my family and my children as an entity that was loaned to me. You know, is like a ministry where you were given the opportunity, guided by God, to fashion and to influence and to create. Um, in your children, you're given the opportunity to build and create and to add to the life of an individual from birth and onward. And as a wife, I remember once I heard a show, and they were saying that this was a Jewish show, and they were talking about women in the home. And this is something that never left me. When the guy, he said, although the man is the head of the home, that the female, they believe that the female sets the tone. She sets that tone in the house. And if you really look at it, you realize that based on the mother figure or the wife figure in the house, there are a lot of things that can either be built in a stronger manner, or they can be deficits in some areas depending on how the woman in that home fashions herself, how she influences the children, how she surrounds her husband and stuff like that. In my opinion, I think one of the problems that we deal with a lot in society and in the even in Christian community is where we are too influenced by the Hollywood lifestyle. And for me, I believe that we need to really stick to the basics and the principles, the foundational teachings of Christ regarding family. I also believe that as far as parenting, that it can be easier or it can be more difficult based on the tools that you were given. For me, I remember there was a time when I had one of my children, and I was at a service and I was being prayed for. And I stood there and I cried. And that was my third child. And at that point in time, I felt like I cannot believe I am a mother of 3 children, because at that point in time, I felt with an emotion that came over me, and I felt like I still felt like a child myself. And I had to deal with a lot of stuff from my own background. Parenting was not easy for me because, in my opinion, you are a better parent, or a more, what you would say, you are a step ahead based on what you were given as a child. And I believe that that is one of the major challenges that parents have today, that women have today, because we're talking about women. If you had parents that would have really taught you, been an example before you, and you would have been given those tools of how to go about being a wife and a mother from a child, to me, I find that you have a better chance at more or less finding that balance and managing things better from a young age. And one of my concerns, having gone through it myself, is where you find that there are a lot of women out there that they never had that example or those teachings or that model of being in a household where there was a standard and also a balance, that equilibrium between husband and wife, where they saw that and they were given these tools to use in their own family. So for me, I think that it depends a lot on your background and the tools you were handed down as a child and growing up into a woman. To me, I think it can be either more difficult or challenging based on those things.
I'll tell you something. These ladies, listeners, are not messing around. You can hear the passion in their presentation. They're not just picking something from their pockets. This seems like this is everyday life, 24/7. They are into this. And I want Nicole to know that she has support even from myself in this context. When she made the point that the woman sets that tone in the home, I'm sure there are some men who would probably be raising their eyebrows and pondering, but that is what the book of Proverbs points out for us in chapter 31. As brilliant as that man may be outside of the home, that woman is the one setting that tone. That woman, she doesn't just do needlework. She doesn't just cook. She makes that man look sharp outside. She is involved in real estate. That woman is solid. So I take your point. I'm happy that you also consider this as ministry. So you don't just take it lightly, well, oh, I'm going to do this or that. And I think what is even a little challenging, and I hope every listener is paying attention, she made a very telling point. She said in a lot of instances, Hollywood is influencing our families, and we need to check that. We need to let the teachings of Jesus Christ, as she's pointing out, be the element that governs our families. Madame Graves, would you like to shed some light on that? How does our upbringing influence our family life, in your view?
Well, I think that your family of origin has a direct bearing on what you bring to your own family. Some of what you do is in your family subconsciously either play out of what you saw or lived, and you make a conscious decision to, if it was good, to copy it, to emulate it and replicate it in your new family. If it's bad, you might totally reject it. And usually it's a combination of the two, If you've grown up in a family where there's shouting and abuse and pulling down and nagging, you might end up rejecting that, or, as I said, subconsciously weaving some of that into your new family. But the good news is that what you learn can be unlearned. And if you become aware that these things are negative, or through reading that a particular pattern of behavior is, or counseling that this particular pattern is not doing your family good, you can unlearn, because you can learn from other families as well. People that you admire, you might try out some of the things you see them doing. I remember as a young mother, I did a lot of reading and picked up ideas there and took some from my own family, and also spoke to colleagues who had older children, and I admired what they were doing, and I asked questions and put it all together and was able to make a success of my own family. So, these are some of the ways that you can use experiences around you to fashion the family that you want to produce. Because I think as a woman, it's important to have a vision for your family, to set goals for the family. And as Nicole says, a lot of young families or young women don't know how to do this, or to know that this is important. You mentioned television. Television makes love seem like a lovely little thing with the bow tied up, couples gazing into each other's eyes and holding hands and floating off into the sunset. He's bringing the flowers and wine and dining here, there, and everywhere. But we know that family life can be challenging. It has its ups and downs. Children aren't always, sweet and easy to handle. Dealing with your partner can have its challenges as well. And that's where, again, as Nicole says, you need your spiritual rock to stand on. I don't know how parents and families that don't have Christ in their life, how do they manage? Where do they take their challenges when they come,
I
And
like
it's
your
really
honesty.
upsetting to me when I hear young people say they don't believe in God. Not that they don't go to church, but they just don't believe in God. And I'm horrified that you've come this far in our part of the world that our young people can say they don't believe in God.
Well, I really like your honesty there, Madam Graves, for the simple reason that, and you made a statement that will remain with me for a long time, that those negative things that were learned can be unlearned. I really appreciate that, because you seem to have been reading my mind, because I wanted to point out, well, if all these families that had these challenges, the shouting, the misbehavior, and the abusive attitudes towards them and so on, if it would make any change in their lives, or could they be better, or would they continue like that? So you gave a very telling response. I really appreciate that. Nicole, what is your perspective on that? How does our upbringing influence our family life?
Can you repeat the last thing you said?
Yes, I was asking how does our own upbringing influence our family life?
Well, Francilia, Miss Graves, I heard you said something that jumped out at me, and what you said was you touched um, on the idea that based on what people see, that sometimes they can try to go in the opposite direction. But one of the unfortunate things too that we have to deal with is that sometimes people do not fully understand, not that they want to, like for me, there were areas in my life as a woman coming up where there were behaviors that I would have learned and I would have ingested as a child, based on observing and interaction in my own family. I did not come up in a home where there was a husband and a wife and stuff like that. And my parents, they would have had me as teenagers. So they were very immature, and they didn't have like a lot of nuggets of wisdom and stuff like that at the time to give, and we have to also look at all of these things, because sometimes you might think, well, I want to be better, I want to do this a different way. But for me, one of the major challenges was, how do I get that done? And one of the things that I always would say to young women that would come to me now, because it's a journey, and I've come a long way, thank God, and he's done a lot in my life. But one of the things that I push is to emulate. I think a lot of us would we go to the foundational teaching of the older women teaching the younger ones. That for me is missing a lot today in the church. It is a major thing for me, where sometimes you find the older women, they're so busy wanting to be young forever, and then you have the younger women, they're not teachable. A lot of them today, they have their education, they have a lot going for them, as opposed to years ago when, not that I'm against that, because I too am pursuing my education, but understand that there's a measure of wanting to be independent that can come with that. And sometimes if you don't have that balance, you can tend not to be teachable. And that's one of the things for me that is missing in the church and the society as a whole. So what I did coming up, as far as learning the tools for life, there were a number of women. I've always had some woman in my life that God would have brought to my life to teach me, whether it was a pastor, somebody else's mom, and I was always teachable. I think that the women of today, we need to be teachable. Is very important. I would have purposely aligned myself with women throughout my life that I can learn from. So where only the other day I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's a younger mother than I am, and I was saying to her, there's a type of woman that I aspire to be. and I'm not fully there. As a matter of fact, it's an ongoing journey, but I've come a long way. And I was saying to her, always look for people in your circle. It doesn't even have to be somebody that is in your immediate circle, but it could be someone even that you admire from afar, like a minister or whatever, that has the qualities that you see that you need, not necessarily even want, but that you need to have in your life. And I always advise younger women, align yourself with women who are wiser and who have the qualities and the capabilities that you believe are helpful to you. So that's where I went with my as my development as a woman. I always aligned myself with somebody who I felt could help me. And I think that that is something that we need to push more, you know, that mentoring.
I want to pose this question to both of you. And I think it's significant what both of you are saying. And although we are acknowledging women and their perspective, I want to put a counter from a man's perspective. Do you think we need to start teaching men or training men to be as much as involved in the family life activity, and and being supportive, because if the woman is just seen as being the nurturer, she seems as almost she's doing everything, and the men are considered, well, going and playing dominoes with the fellas or getting a few drinks. So of course we don't expect that from the believer, but by the same token, the man in the house or the husband, whoever he is, cannot also be just at church or in church activities. Do you think we need to have some training sessions perhaps to help our men to be supportive and be involved in the family activity? Madam Graves?
Well, I think I have seen some change, as I go around. Now I see men taking their children to school, lifting them up, taking them out. I think that the younger men are changing. I was smiling a bit when you posed the question, because when you read the lesson in Proverbs, one note that the woman is doing everything and the man is just sitting in the council. I don't know if you've observed that.
You're observant.
Yes, but as I said, the younger men are changing, and I think that they are making an effort to help more. And what the women must do is to encourage them. They may not be able to do what you do as well as you can, but when they're making an effort, you've got to support, encourage, appreciate, and I think gradually they will come along.
Well, I like that. I don't think the men can say that I did not give them a little helping hand. Dr. Pinkley, sorry, we lost her for a little bit, but she's back with us now. You were beginning to respond to the question, how much does our own upbringing influence our family life? Doctor, are you with us?
Yes, I am, very much. Thank you.
Go full steam ahead.
Well, in fact, to perhaps 80–90% of who we become rests on the way we have been brought up. Or how we're brought up will impact on who we become as adults in one form or the other. And one of my colleagues just mentioned that some persons, when having been brought up in a particular way, they tend to seek to push themselves away from those negatives. So yes, they may have been brought up in an abusive situation, and they will themselves to embrace the opposite behavior. But parenting styles over the years have been said to be a very, very impactful thing on how children eventually grow up and how they respond to the world. And so in our Caribbean region, unfortunately, we have been more exposed to the authoritarian parenting style. That parenting style does not facilitate response from the child. In fact, if the child is being punished, and usually that is with the rod, and the child is crying, very often the parent would say, "What are you crying for? Did I give you anything to cry? Would you like me to give you something to cry?" And so the child is forced to suck up or to downplay his or her pain. And most of us in the Caribbean, certainly up until, say, perhaps a decade ago, were brought up in the authoritarian parenting style. And what several research have shown is that that style will eventually, because it doesn't facilitate reciprocal dialogue, it does not facilitate um, any kind of bonding and connection. And the child is just told what to do, and the child is punished. And no, there's no lesson to be learned from what the child has done wrong and if he is being corrected. All of that form part of the negative impact of what that kind of parenting style will have on the child. And so the child will grow up with low self-esteem, may not be the best social person, may not understand how to assert him or herself in appropriate ways. And so yes, your parenting style can impact on the child. Sometimes abuse is facilitated within the household. Mothers turn their backs when the fathers or the stepfathers are being physically or even sexually abusive to the child. Incest is prevalent. So whilst there are those negatives, there are the positives as well, where a child is brought up in a home where he is allowed to express himself. He is allowed to share in the decisions as far as is appropriate of the home. He is given boundaries, but he is allowed to be himself and to show himself as this unique person. All of that is facilitated. That child is likely to grow up to respect people's views, yes, also recognize that he has a voice, as opposed to the authoritarian parenting style that would cause a child to feel that I can't speak. So all of that, remember now, the family is the first, the core of a child's socialization. That's where they learn community, that's where they learn interaction. And if those values and if those various interactions are not positive, the child will likely embrace those, and the outcome can be very, very negative. Hence, you find a lot of us are still struggling with our self-worth, are still struggling with who we are still trying to find ourselves even at 45, 50. We are still struggling with unforgiveness because of some of those issues. And very often we don't get any help. Yes, we become Christians, but we're still struggling because we don't know how to leave that and to let that go. And we're told that once you become a Christian, the blood of Jesus will wash away your sins and will wash away all of that. But Joseph struggled with unforgiveness at one point when he looked at his brothers and saw what they did, remembered what they did. Yes, he didn't hate them, but he struggled with, how do I then reach out to them and help them? They're at my mercy. I can do anything with them. And he did a couple tricks with them. And that was an indication that he was struggling. He was struggling because he was hurt. And so it is no secret that once you have those negative experiences or positive experiences as a child, certainly in the early years of development, 0 to 5, you likely will have have negative or positive sustained impact on your life. Yes, we can make a decision that we're going to change or we're going to do different things, but very often it's very, very challenging for persons to undo some of those negatives. So yes, what happens in your
Doctor,
early years will impact.
sorry to cross you at this point, but before I go back to Nicole, I want to put this to you, and I want to hear your views on it. Is it your experience that women feel pressure to get it right as far as loving their families? And if it's been your experience, Why is it so?
The thing is that if even now, even now, as Francilia said, that their men have changed and men are stepping up more to the plate now, and that's wonderful. And I have seen them in the clinics, in taking the children to school and so on. But the fact is that certainly when I was growing up, and even 15, 20, or 30 years subsequent to my birth, you would, a little boy, if he falls down and bruises his hand or whatever, and he attempts to cry, he is told that big boys don't cry. And so he's allowed to suck it up. And then he doesn't know what to do with that emotion over time, because if he sucks it up every time, he never expresses those negative emotions, because expressing them. And so in addition to that, the mothers in the home say to the boys, it's okay for you to go out. It's okay for you to go on the street. It's okay for you to go out. So they never really learned anything domestic. They just learn to have fun. They just learn to be that. And so that is part of how a lot of our men have been socialized. And the girls were told that they need to stay home, they need to cook, they need to learn all these various things, because that is what girls do. I think it's very important that we begin to change that. I'm not saying that some of that should not obtain, because I believe that there's a place for that. But the men need to learn how to do it, and there has to be some balance in how we socialize our girls and our boys. And so that said, um, if that doesn't change in how we perceive how a girl should be brought up, then it is going to affect what happens in a marriage. Because number one, the boys are not going to understand when she gets moody, when she has all the various monthly things happening to her and it affects her mood. And he's going to feel that she's just miserable because he doesn't understand negative emotions. And he's going to feel, based on how he was brought up, that she is to do whatever she should do alone, because he's a man and all he really should do is to bring in the bread, and the rest is history. So we have to change the way we socialize. I think we have changed a lot in that regard, but I think that there has to be more. So the woman will feel that the burden is on me, because I have to be seen to the children, and I'm doing 40 things at the same time. And he's watching television, or he's on the road with his friend, and he comes in just at the point when dinner is served, and then he goes elsewhere when he doesn't participate. But we need to change that.
I like that. Nicole, I want to pose this to you. The career woman, she still has a family. How difficult is that for her to balance both aspects of her world? Because she wants to succeed, she wants to be promoted, she wants to, quote unquote, make it in life, while she still has a family to look after. How can you speak to this? What would you say in the light of the challenges she's likely to face, how difficult it could
be? Okay, the first thing I would like to touch on regarding that is the side of the male. Dr. Pickney, that's it?
Loan is fine. Loan is fine.
Okay, I heard you say you were talking about and Francilia, you were also talking about men you were seeing change. I actually think it was more you that were saying talking about men changing and seeing them taking on certain roles and stuff like that, more supporting and more of a domestic type. For me, I have, I would say, a question around that. Where is it that they are really changing, or is it that women have set a different standard? There's a different type of female now that is being fashioned, and even in the church, whereas women would once before be more focused on just the spiritual element of things. Like, for example, me, as far as the balance of the home, there was a time in my marriage where I played more of a housewife role. I would have sacrificed a lot to be at home with my kids, and I felt at the time that it was necessary for where we wanted our family to go. And as things evolved and I started to feel the need now to work on me, where I would begin to start to encounter that balance and stuff as a person that I felt was needed to evolve into that person. Because I always say to people, I have this woman in mind that I am aspiring to be. And I am on my way, you know, to building that and putting the right things in place to become better, to grow, to evolve, you know. And I think that as far as the balance, I think that the men need to play a very integral role as far as supporting their wives. And I know in the church we are taught a lot about the man being the head of the home. And in my opinion, sometimes that is more or less, I would say, I would an advantage of sometimes in certain cases, and it can be taught in a way where it is not well balanced. And I find that many times is a real struggle, especially for women in the church, to try to position themselves as far as development, because we are more seen as wants to just keep and surround and protect the home and to be the backbone. That is fine. But on the other hand, I believe that the men need to play also a very strong supportive role. And I find that one of the problems we have is where when we try to, what would you say? When we try to touch that area of men being the head of the home, because of all of the warped teachings that would have gone ahead of us, and the women today becoming a different type of woman and understanding that yes, you can be a mother, you can be a good wife, and you can be a career woman, right? But the problem is that sometimes you find that there's an insecurity in the men. And I find that when you have to come up against that, you can have a lot of challenges in your home. For me, my husband had to readjust in a lot of areas because I came to a place where I said, well, you know, honey, I would have given many years towards just mainly dedicating and focusing on you and the kids. And now I'm at the place of maturity where I want to explore, you know, life, explore things, explore my studies and stuff like that. And I'll be honest with you, there was a point in time in my marriage where it was a real tug of war, where my husband could not understand my need and my desire to even further my studies, you know, and we had to come to that place where we had to find that balance. And for me, I think that the woman coming into balance relies on two things that comes to mind when I think about it. Women have to understand that they need sometimes to stand, and they need to more or less put down their foot and say, I refuse to be substandard and not grow and not develop, and just let the men know this is a part of my journey and you have to respect that. You know, the funny thing about it is, me saying this now, years ago, I would have buckled in fear to say something like that because I would feel as though I am displeasing God. But as I said, you go back to the warped teachings, which suppresses women just to being in the home and being prayer warriors and stuff like that. No, that is fine. I support that. I believe in that. But for me, you see the insecurity that we have in some of the men today, that is a major problem with women finding balance. And then on the other hand, the warped teachings that we have been given and subjected to coming up, especially in Christendom, where women are taught that we are merely just to focus on the spiritual aspect. And we have to always wait on the man to give permission for us to find our way and to make decisions and to say where they think we should go and not go and not do, you know. And for me, that can be a challenge for me as far as development.
I can still hear your passion there, Nicole. Francilia, how do you respond in that same context of the career woman balancing both that activity and also looking after her family? Because when I look at all three of you, you are fitting that perspective and that formation. So how do you respond to that, Francilia?
I'm wondering whether perhaps premarital counseling might be very useful in that regard, so that before the couple, you know, become a couple, that they would thrash these things out and you lay out your expectations and, you know, what you need within a relationship, so the man understands where you're coming from before you settle down. Or for him to
That's
discover
interesting.
whether he is prepared to learn, whether he is willing to be supportive and to undertake some of the household duties, support your goals and ambitions.
Interesting. Dr.
That's
Pinkney,
very
what's your
important.
perspective?
I concur with Francilia that premarital counseling should set it up. But when the rubber meets the road, 10 years down the line, sometimes perspectives change, sometimes feelings change, and it may not necessarily capture the butterflies that were there 10 years prior. And so the response may be different. The response may be no, but there has to be a conversation. And I believe that a woman should not, or a man, should not just take it upon himself or herself and make decisions to change the pattern of interaction within the household without a conversation. The conversation should look at the need of the person who is making the, initiating the change, because it's going to be a change. The conversation should include what interventions do we need to put in place so that the children in particular, or the core of the family unit, is sustained. The conversation, so you have to look at the support that you may need to have. So there has to be a conversation, and it may not be a one conversation, because the first one may be you may disagree, and you may need to get a third party.
Yes.
But to just decide that I am my own woman, which of course you are, but in another sense you're not, and just to say I'm gonna do it because I want to do it and so on, is one thing according to Proverbs, not wise. And so and also we have to be cognizant of the frailty of a man's ego. When we go to a man to tell him that we are going to go to school and this is what is going to happen and he better do it or leave it, and that's that, right away his ego raises its ugly head and all kinds of pandemonium can. And I'm not saying that you should not assert yourself, but you should have a conversation which is lined with respect and regard for him as the head of the household, but also to recognize that yes, as a woman, you need to assert yourself. So yes, you're promoted. What does promotion mean? Promotion mean more money, and that's wonderful. But maybe at that point in time of the promotion, you are doubling his salary. And why is that good? Because then it means that he can have the car that he wanted. It means that he can do all the various other things. But there's also the ego, which we should not ignore. And so the conversation should be had. So, and if necessary, there should be intervention so that there is a comprehensive look at the impact as best as possible. Because sometimes it's when you're actually involved in the various activities that you realize, oh my gosh, we didn't think of that. What can we do? But if both parties are treated with respect and regard, there's usually an easier sell. I remember when I was doing my first degree, I already had two children. Can't remember now, but I think I had 2 children. And it so happened that I would leave work. I would leave work at 4:30. And I would, my classes would start, luckily this the institution was not, the university was not far from where I lived. And so I would come home, get home in half an hour because I drove, and I would see to homework. No, this is after a conversation was had for about a year that I wanted to do certain studies, and everybody agreed. But then when everything was laid out, persons who were supposed to do certain things just were not. And so I had to say to myself, okay, I need to put a system in place. So I put a system in place, and I would get home from work, help with homework, and I would have, say, half an hour or 15 minutes to get to class. It was hectic, but I did it. And over time, when persons began to see that, you know, things were working and so on, persons relaxed and it worked out. But I had to take the initiative to set up a system so that it works. So the woman may have to do that, but it should not be done without a conversation and the regard for the full picture of the impact of the situation. But she shouldn't sit and say, I am the woman, I must just sit and not seek to rise. Because I believe that God has a plan for all of us, and he wants us to do well. He wants us to succeed. He wants us to achieve our full potential. And we can only do that if we strive toward that.
Ladies, I'm
And it's
enjoying
also to
this totally, but you
Francis.
know our time is running away from us. But I can't let this pass. Somebody try to be real smart this evening and give me this question to give you all. And I'm asking the doc first to address it. And then I will tell the other two ladies what I wanted them. Doc, how do we make sure our behind closed door and public family love align? How do we make sure our behind closed door and public family love align?
Sorry, I didn't hear the full question. How do we make sure?
How do we make sure that our behind closed door and public family love align? I'm getting the
Align,
impression that they
align,
probably want to say
align.
something else.
Did you
Yeah,
say
how they align.
align? Okay.
Yes.
I remember when I was growing up, my mother had this thing with me where she gave me the look. She gave me the look, and I knew what it meant. My mother was a teacher. My father was a pastor. My father's look meant that I was going to get, because I was maybe misbehaving in church while he was preaching. He would stop in the middle of the preaching and tell me to sit or tell me to stop the behavior, because that was very embarrassing. But my mother would give me the look. I think that, and so over time, I came under subjection as a result of the look. And once I looked at my mother and I saw that look, I knew that she didn't approve, and I knew I needed to correct my behavior. I believe that a big part of what a husband and wife should have is an unspoken code between them. So when they're in public and they feel uncomfortable about something that is happening, that they should be able to look at each other and understand what that means because of the bond and the connection that they have. It doesn't mean that you're not going to disagree in behind closed doors. But when you're behind closed doors, you still are real, you still are open, you still are honest with each other. So there is no animosity that's carried, there is no, and you openly say exactly how you feel, so that you're really living an open book in terms of your life. What is interesting is that you can pretend with the church, you can pretend with your brothers and sisters and even your offices and whatever, but you can't pretend with your children. And they will look and know what's going on. So my suggestion to persons to ensure that your private life and your public life align is that you'll be honest with each other, you'll be open with each other, have at least one person, yes, God is there and it's wonderful that you can talk to the Lord. And I believe that praying to the Lord is good, but there are times when you need a body. And that body must be someone sound. It does have to be a pastor, because poor pastor is already burdened. But the point I'm making is have someone who's a sounding board for you as a couple. And to be able to say, hey, this is what is happening. Because your aim should be how we are going to deal with this and not how me. Because the M is now turned upside down and it's a we, and that is what you have to sustain. So I think ensuring that you talk about what's happening, don't keep it inside, talk about it, deal with it. Sometimes you may not resolve it because some things just you will never agree, and that's okay. But you need to recognize that you're working together for the benefit of your relationship and as a couple. And so who you are behind closed doors should be essentially who you are in the public face.
Francilia, you have 90 seconds to respond to this. It's going to be your closing comment.
I would just add
What?
to.
I didn't get that.
No, I said I would just add to what Joan was saying, that you should be consistent and be honest and not be one person behind closed doors and a different person outside, you know. Outside you're honey and darling, and inside you're nasty and dropping remarks, putting the other person down, and that sort of thing.
Right.
Cultivate the same behaviors in and out, be respectful of each other, you know, the common courtesies, thank you, you're welcome, please, could you please pass me this or that? You know, the same niceties that you will accord in the public view should be the same in the house. And then the children themselves will absorb that, they will see that, they will model that, and they respect both parents.
Because you were such a pleasant person and you were so solid in your presentation, I will still give you your 90 seconds. You will have 90 seconds to respond. It's your final comment. What should we do when we make mistakes? What should we do when we make mistakes? And this is in the light of the family. 90 seconds.
Oh, well, that, you know, the usual thing, when you make a mistake, you should admit it. As long as you recognize you made a mistake, you acknowledge you made a mistake, and you go to your partner and you apologize. You make it clear that you will try not to make that same mistake again. You know, I think that is very important, and not to let the other person, you know, hold a grudge. You try to mend your fences.
Sounds good.
I give, you know, a simple example, like my husband and I, when we were rearing children, we are both going to work. In the morning, you might be a bit stressed, and the man usually has the meetings and whatnot, and the wife is the one who has to struggle to get the children to school on time and get herself to work as well. But by the time you get to work, you get a phone call saying, look, you know, I was really stressed this morning. I'm sorry. Maybe I snapped. So you quickly mend that fence.
I like it. I like it. I'm not going to forget those words. Mend your fences. Nicole, this one is for you. You got 90 seconds as well. I am asking you, what do you think you should tell the young ladies who are coming through and expected to be the next generation of family builders? What do you think you should tell the young ladies?
First of all, I'm glad you gave me that question, because it gave me opportunity to say to Joan, I am glad where you went with what you were saying, because initially when I was speaking about my experience, sometimes you can speak and you can leave out certain things that would bring a balance. And she comes across as a woman with a wealth of knowledge, and that's very admirable.
Yes, she does.
And I want to say yes, because when I was dealing with my own development, there was also an aspect of counseling, and there were mature people that would have also been allowed to come in and advise and, you know, give correction and stuff like that. As far as in general, I would say that as far as being a young woman and trying to you know, more or less grow, develop, you know, and to as I said, evolve. I think that you should always seek to implement wisdom, and I think you should always seek to have that spiritual balance, and I think it goes back to as well to always being teachable. I think that being teachable is very important with regarding any aspect in your life. Even at my age, I am teachable, and I always admire, because that's the key to me to
I
growth
love
and
it.
development. We're
Mm-hmm.
all at different places, and I always believe in going to the wise. You know, I'm privileged to be here this evening with two ladies that I would say are senior to me. You know, it's really, really a really good conversation, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm learning. And I always say the key to success, the key to life is to be teachable. And that's what I would say to the
I like
younger
that.
women out there regarding their career, regarding their family choices, regarding their style of parenting, whatever. Always be open to wisdom, somebody who knows more than you and can teach you.
I
Definitely.
like that. An attitude of teachableness, being able to be taught. Dr. John Pinkney, final word with you. Now, although it's Women's Week, I really think that sometimes we as people make a big mistake in just holding one gender to the next. So I asking you from the next side, what do you need to tell the young men
Mhm.
so that they can help make this family a beautiful relationship? So that in time to come, the Caribbean family is seen as not just being vibrant, but an example for others to follow. How do you respond to that?
First of all, a strong man is a man who is not afraid to cry, who is not afraid to show the negative emotions. Albeit that, as we say in Jamaican parlance, you shouldn't be bali bali, but you should be able to manage um, the emotions, but you should feel free to express them appropriately. And so maybe you were never taught how to do certain things, but find someone, get some counseling, go to your school counselor, because all schools are equipped with a guidance counselor, and say, look, I need to know how to express my emotions appropriately. Um, because once you become in touch with your emotions, you're likely to understand someone else who's expressing some of those same emotions. So be in touch with your emotions, know who you are as a man, have a list of things that you want in in a woman. Have a list of things that you want your wife, your future wife, to be. But that list first must apply to you. So even as you have a list of someone who you want to be sociable, you want her to be X, and you want her to all the various things that you want her to be, that's wonderful. But ensure that you are first able to check off all of those things on that list first. A young man called me on my radio program one evening and he said, oh, I'm looking for a nice lady. So I said to him, wonderful, what kind of woman do you want? And he had a list of about 10 things. And I said, I'm so happy that you know exactly what you want. But let me ask you, how many of those things are you? And he says, I beg your pardon? And he said, I asked the question again. And he says, you know, I never thought of that. Because as I said to him, it's wonderful that you know who you want, but that same woman, that profile of a woman that you have, she is also holding that same list and looking for a man with those same character traits. So even as you seek for the kind of woman that you want, you must ensure that you are almost all, if not all and more of those things. Recognize that you are special, that you are made different from the woman, and that you must own how you're made and what God brought you to be. Seek him so that he can tell you what specific tasks that he has, what plans he has for you. But know that he made you to be leader. He made you to be the solid persons, but also to balance that with who you are as a human being and as a man.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Our esteemed panelists, Francilia Graves, Nicole Clark, and Dr. John Pinkney, really laying hold of this topic tonight, how to love your family as a woman. This is Reverend Stephen Giddens signing off on this Women's Week for the creators and directors of Family Fest. May God bless you, and we pray that the information has not just been insightful, but impactful, causing all of us to be better persons in the kingdom of God. God bless you and take care.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong.